With Halloween literally just around the corner, let's go ahead and build a PC that's Halloween themed. And this is going to be perfect because I just found a case that I wanted to go ahead and test out. And it's the Thermaltake Tower 100 in metallic gold. And it has this perfect orange color, so let me go ahead and show it to you guys. This is the case right here. And it's got this beautiful orange and black aesthetic, which I think if we build right, could look absolutely amazing. I don't really have the parts too much planned out, so let's go ahead and run over to my inventory and check out what we want to go ahead and throw in this system. So let's go ahead and walk over and take a look at it. When it comes to part selection availability, we are pretty limited, mainly when it comes to motherboards, because I don't have a ton of mini ITX boards, mainly just Intel boards right now. And I think probably the best one for the kind of black and orange aesthetic is this Aorus B760i Pro DDR4 board. That would be pretty nice. I'm pretty sure this board is kind of like an all black and gray aesthetic. That would match everything perfect. All right, so let's go ahead and take that. We'll go ahead and put this over here with the PC case. And let's go ahead and pick some more stuff out. So we're gonna definitely do a CPU for this. I don't think in this case we're gonna be able to fit a big enough radiator to do something like an i5-12600KF. So let's go with 13400. I have one of these on hand. So let's go ahead and throw one of these in here. This is still a solid CPU. Not the most ideal for gaming, but it should work. And then for cooling that, I think my plan was just to use this Thermaltake TH120V2, their ARGB Sync Edition. This is actually a new cooler. This one just came out. So let's actually test this out. And I think it's pretty good and put this down. Let's go ahead and see what else we got. Okay, so at this point, we really just need to figure out GPU. That's probably the biggest thing, I think. I have the most options here. So I do have this used 3060 Ti. This is the EVGA for the Win 3. It does have this red accent, and I believe this is RGB here, but I don't think the fans have RGB, and I kind of want it. Even though I don't like RGB on most GPUs, we're actually gonna be able to see it in this case. This 3080 is probably too big for the case. Let's see if I can get it out. Yeah, it's probably too big, and it's gonna require a pretty large power supply. So let's go with this 4070, I think. This one is a gigabyte. I think it's one of their WindForce cards, but it does have RGB around the fans, which we could set to orange, which will look really good with our theming of the build. So let's go ahead and take this guy, and we'll go ahead and throw it over here. All right, and now, okay, and now we just need a power supply. Power supply wise, it really doesn't matter. I'm probably just gonna go with this EVGA 850 G5. This is a used one I have that I've used before. So let's go ahead and take this guy, throw it over here, and now we don't need probably any extra fans or anything. So let's go over to our memory section. So memory, we can do probably 32 gigabytes of this T-Force Delta because we're doing DDR4. And then storage-wise, let's just do an NVMe drive. We just need something to be fast. We might use it for some testing. So let's go ahead and just do this P5 Plus. I'd probably go with a 1 terabyte if I was building this for like a long-term build, but I might be tearing this down afterwards. And then there's one more thing I want to grab while I'm here. I did think of this idea a little while back, but I wasn't sure if I was going to do it or if it was going to be a fall-themed. But I got some black and orange cable extensions I think are going to look amazing. So let's go ahead and take those over there and let's see what we got. From what it looks like, we have everything that we need to go ahead and get this build started. And I think this black, it's really mainly like a blackout build with the orange aesthetics really coming from these cable extensions, which I'm super excited about. They don't perfectly match, but I think it will look good enough, especially with the tint on the glass. And then we'll go ahead and have some additional accents from some of their RGB elements that we'll go ahead and set to maybe some kind of dark orange color to kind of match everything. So let's go ahead and get the system built. All right, to get started, let's go ahead and prep this motherboard. So let's go ahead and pull it right out of the box and just We go ahead and close the box back up. You can kind of use the surface of your motherboard box as a nice little play surface to kind of build everything out. Makes everything way easier to work with. So with the motherboard on the motherboard box, we can go ahead and get all of our other components installed onto the motherboard. Starting off with the CPU, to go ahead and get this installed, we'll go ahead and just push down on the lever to go ahead and release the retention mechanism. And go ahead and carefully take our CPU and put it right into place. And then from there we can go ahead and lower down the retention mechanism and pull off our socket cover. Always hold on to these for RMA purposes. And then for memory, let's go ahead and get that installed. So we got stick 1 here, and these are going to look great, especially once we have the RGB set to probably like a dark orange. It's going to glow really nicely. And then for our SSD, we actually have to go ahead and remove this massive heatsink. So let's go ahead and do that. I need a smaller screwdriver. So let's go ahead and just get this guy out. 1, 2, 3. Now we'll go ahead and let you actually lift up this metal plate, which is kind of just a decorative piece. I don't really think it does a whole lot. And then we can go ahead and release the actual heatsink for the SSD. So we can go ahead and lift that up. And we're going to go ahead and peel that off in just a second. So let's set that off to the side. We'll take our Crucial P5 Plus, go ahead and slot that into place, lower it down, and then we'll go ahead and just peel this right off. And we can go ahead and slot this back down and screw it in. So that preps the motherboard for the most part. We just have to go ahead and put things back together where they were. So we just got to put these 3 screws back in. Okay, so with the board pretty much prepped, let's go ahead and get some additional componentry installed just to go ahead and make the build much easier. So what I want to do is just get the actual mounting bracket for the CPU cooler on, and this will make the process way easier once the system's in the build to go ahead and attach the AIO. All right, to do this, we just got to go ahead and just peel off the adhesive strips, go ahead and reveal those, and then from there, we go ahead and just grab the system. We can flip around back, and we can go just slot this down. It's nice because they give you adhesive. It makes the process way easier for installation. And then from there, we can go ahead and take our screws and get those all into place. So I'll be right back once these are all done. So with all 4 of those installed, this motherboard is now prepped. So let's go ahead and move on to getting this installed into the case. So with the motherboard prepped, let's go ahead and tear this case apart so we can go ahead and get the motherboard installed, as well as get all of the other components installed before we put everything back together. So to do this, the case disassembles very similar to something like the Tower 200, which I recently did a build in, which you can check out up here. And if you guys haven't checked it out, it's a really cool wide out build that we did. But anyways, with this case, it's a little different. There are a few more screws. This is actually an older case than that one. This one came out first, so let's go ahead and just kind of dive into it and see if we can get this apart. And then once we have it apart, we'll go ahead and build the system. So I think you start off with the other case where you like pop off the top cover, which is kind of cool. It looks like we got some accessories up here. So let's go ahead and just undo this twist tie. Yep, we got all of our case screws as well as some extra mounts. So once we have this exposed up top, I think there's 4 screws up at the top that we just have to go ahead and undo. So let's get these out of the way. I think they're just Phillips. Is that going to fit with our screwdriver, or we need something a little thinner actually? Let's grab something a little easier to work with. There we go. That is a little unfortunate. It's kind of like they're kind of in a cone shape, but it works. No big deal. So we'll go ahead and get that one out. And then we'll go ahead and do this guy. Because I believe what happens is you can pop the entire top off like the Tower 200. And once that's out of the way, it makes the build process way easier. Because then you can just slide off all of these panels, the front, back, all the sides. And it makes it super easy to go ahead and work in. Anytime you have like where you can have all the panels off of a case, especially like these open form factor cases, it's really hard to beat how easy it is to work in these. So we should be able to just go ahead and pop this out. There we go. I think we're just going to undo this screw just a little more. And should be able to go ahead and pop this guy up. One. Not sure what's holding this one. Oh, there's one extra screw I just found. All right, so with those screws kind of all out now, we can go ahead and lift up the top cover. That makes a lot more sense now. So let's go ahead, set this off to the side. We'll need it later to go ahead and reassemble the case. And from there, we can now, I believe, lift up these sides to go ahead and get the glass panels, which are actually attached to these nice ventilation. I gotta say, the color on this is amazing. So, all right, we can set these off to the side. We'll set them behind me just to make it easier. Grab the other one. Also set that one off to the side. And it just shows how easy it is to work in a case like this as soon as you get these panels off. Because for something like this, the paint job on this is amazing. I'm really impressed with what Thermaltake was able to do. I've worked with them in the past on some projects, and they always do a great job. And I haven't seen some of their these special colors that they've done before. Besides at CES, I saw a couple. They did like a racing green, which is really cool. And I definitely want to do like a cool theme build in one of those eventually, but this is definitely one I wanted to check out as soon as I saw it. So I think the back just unscrews. We got that out of the way. There is a rear fan. I'm not sure if we'll use that or not. And then now we basically got a empty cage that we can go ahead and build our system in. So let me go ahead and see, do we have we got our standoffs in place. So let's go ahead and get this motherboard installed. So let me go ahead and lay it down. I'll give you guys an overhead view and we'll go ahead and jump into it. So with the PC case laid down like this, we can go ahead and lower the motherboard right into place. Go ahead and line that up. Fortunately, we have a built-in I/O shield, which makes the process so much easier. And now let's go ahead and get this screwed in. All right, so the motherboard's all screwed in at this point. So let's go ahead and do what I always call pre-wiring, which is basically where I run all the front panel connectors ahead of time. So let's go ahead and get that done. So the system's pretty much pre-wired at this point. Really, all we have to do is go ahead and get this fan extension cable installed. This is basically like a mini connector that Gigabyte's been using to go ahead and make so you can fit additional fan headers onto the board. So we're gonna go ahead and install that there on the board just for the additional fan that we have in the system, just to go ahead and make our lives easier in the future. So one thing that we do need to also take care of while we have the system laying down like this is I'm gonna get rid of this top fan. I'm actually gonna be putting in our own fans when it comes to the actual CPU cooler. So we're gonna use that top mounting bracket for the AIO. So let's get this fan out of the way. We might be able to use it somewhere else, but we'll go ahead and get this out of the way for now. All right, we got this fan out, so let's go ahead and move on to the next step. All right, so with the motherboard now in, and we all have pretty much all the pre-wiring done that I wanted to go ahead and take care of. That makes the life much easier when we have to go ahead and cable manage everything. So let's go ahead and run our cable extensions ahead of time before we even put in the power supply. I did this with the Tower 200 and it made the process super simple. So let's go ahead and get all these installed. So we can go ahead and get this cable extension installed for the 24 pin. How I'm gonna do this is actually just pre-run everything back and then bend everything over. We're gonna get a nice bend on this guy just to go ahead and make sure it's super visible because I think this is really what's gonna add the pop to this build. So we got 24 pin is now in and it's coming out the back, which is perfect. We might tuck this a little further. I'm not sure exactly how much more I want to adjust it with. All right, I think that should be good with that cable extension. So let's go ahead and run our top one for the 8 pin, which goes right up top. So let me go ahead and do that. So this guy goes in up top, and then we're gonna go ahead and just run it right through this side connector here. And then that will go ahead and run down along the side of the case once it's in the back. So I think I'm gonna do it something like that right there. So nice smooth bend on it, just to go ahead and make that super clean as that kind of comes down. So I think that's how I want it with the cable extensions. So with the cable extensions all installed at this point, let's go ahead and get our radiator installed into the system, and then we can go ahead and mount on our CPU water block. To do this, basically the first thing I'm going to do is I already kind of pre-ran a couple of the cables, but what we're going to want to do is go ahead and just slide in the radiator with the fan up top, and then I have the mounting screws right here with the screwdriver, and if we take that, we'll go ahead and get this screwed into place. What I'll do is I'm not going to tighten them all the way down until I know exactly where I want them, and I always recommend when you do this, go in like a diagonal method basically, so you can go ahead and make sure that it's not ever putting too much strain on any one corner of the radiator while you're mounting it. For 120s, it's not as big of a deal because they're pretty light, but for 240s or 360s or anything larger, you definitely always want to do that. So with that out of the way, we can go ahead and get a couple things plugged in. So we have a couple fan headers and stuff coming off of it, so we're going to have to go ahead and slide these around back. And I'll get these plugged in just a second once I have the actual pump ready. So, and then for the pump, we need to go ahead and install the bracket on it. I think I'm going to go with it with the tubes down. Fortunately, with this actual AIO, the logo actually rotates, which is going to be really nice. It makes the process way easier than trying to flip everything around. So let's go ahead and grab that mount, and then I'll be right back. I just went ahead and actually mounted the CPU cooler onto the actual CPU, just because I wanted to go ahead and do that. It's kind of hard to film. I was kind of getting in the way of it, but that's now installed. So we just have to do some pre-wiring. So we just now have to do some wiring, and then we should be good to go. So let me go ahead and take care of that, and then I'll go ahead and catch up with you guys right after. So with everything pretty much wired up at this point, let's go ahead and install our power supply cables, as well as our power supply, to go ahead and get everything plugged in. All right, to go ahead and get this power supply installed, let's go ahead and pre-wire the cables as much as we can. So I know we have this 24 pin kind of looping around, and I think I'm still gonna do that, but I'm gonna pull it out first, plug in our 24 pin. This is the nice thing about modular power supplies. And then I'm going to go ahead and feed the other end, which will plug into the power supply, back and through and kind of loop it. This way, we can go ahead and rerun the cable how we want it. So it still looks really clean and everything, but we have access to it from our actual proper connectors for the actual power supply. So that's kind of taken care of at this point, which looks real nice. I'll probably play around with how those cables actually run. And then we got to do the same thing with our CPU cable. I got a 8-pin cable right here. We'll go ahead and plug this in. And then this guy will also probably run down into the basement, like the same way the 24 pin did. And then once it's in there, we can pull that, snake that kind of through. And then there we go. So we got those two cables. And then because we have a 12-pin cable for the GPU, we're gonna have to run that up. So we'll probably run it the exact same way, just up to the proper spot. So that's out to the side is where we want it. Because we do have all these cables wired and everything ready to go, we do need to actually take off this bracket to go ahead and install it onto the power supply. So let's do that right now. 1, 2. Usually prefer when those mounts are toolless, but you know, can't always have it perfect. So we'll go ahead and then we'll mount this right on top of this power supply. So I'll be right back after that's done. So with the power supply mount now on, we can go ahead and plug in all of our cables that we already kind of pre-ran. This makes things way easier. So we'll just go ahead and plug in like our motherboard power. So start with that one. And then we got a couple of VGA powers. So we'll go ahead and plug one in there, another one there. And then we got a CPU power. So we'll go ahead and plug that in to our CPU power header. And now, what's really cool about this is we can go ahead and just slide everything forward with the cables and kind of just, if we guide the cables properly, we won't have an issue sliding this into place. And then we can go ahead and take our mounting screws and just get the first one in place, and it basically is pretty much good to go at this point. So we just got to get these other two mounts in. And there we go. So our power supply is good there. We do probably have to play with the cables a little bit with how they're sitting underneath. Make sure we have plenty of room for that big graphics card that's about to go in. But yeah, besides that, that takes care of that. We'll go ahead and probably tighten this up here in the corner to go ahead and give us room on the back, because there is a rear fan that we might actually use. So let's go ahead and get that GPU installed, because that's pretty much the last thing that we have to go ahead and take care of. So let's go ahead and do that. Install this GPU. I think it'll actually work from this angle. So what we have to do is we have to tuck this HD audio cable up as we kind of install it. So we have to be kind of careful with the installation. And it is one thing that sometimes can be a challenge. So let me take off this little cover, and I think we are good. We just have to clear it. So there's usually like a little pin kind of area that you can kind of fit something like that through. And it looks like we are right in the sweet spot. So we just gotta adjust our cabling just a little bit more. I think we need to go ahead and give this guy a little more slack on this side, so it's not such a harsh turn when it comes back down. So this is kind of how I had to do it in the Tower 200 as well. So if we go up again now, and we should be able to slot this card in. Let's see, what are we hitting? Something's hitting. That looks like it is good. Let me just check on this side. And I think once we get this screwed in, it should be good. Yeah, because that cable seems to be clear. So yeah, looks like we're good. So let's go ahead and get this screwed in, and then we will be good. So we just need 2 screws for this GPU. They are thumb screws, but we'll go ahead and just use a screwdriver to go ahead and get them nice and tight. And then we can also take off the plastic I didn't even realize there was on these fan hubs. So we don't have to deal with that later. And then for the 12 pin cable, we'll go ahead and run that. So we'll get that plugged in, and then we'll run these down and out of the way. And now we should have a super clean 12 pin cable coming right out. And these all will be tucked away. There's covering of the bottom. So this is going to look really great. So all we got to do now is just clean up a couple things, plug in some final aspects, but I think this build is pretty much wrapped up. So let's go ahead and do that, and let's fire it up. All right, let's go ahead and fire this system up. Oh, looks like a Thermaltake logo. We got to adjust a little bit. Go ahead and get that nice and straight. You can go ahead and peel the plastic off that as well. And let's see if we get some display on our screen. Might just take a second. Haven't got any display just yet. Let's go ahead and, there we go. It booted right in the BIOS. That's awesome. All right, so this system is now built, and I'm super happy how everything turned out. I'm gonna go ahead and configure some of the RGB. So it's the next day now, and I went ahead and took care of all the cable management, as well as set up the RGB in Windows and did some testing. And I gotta say, this system turned out perfect. I love how just everything tied together, from the cable extensions to the color of the case to the RGB. Everything just looks perfect, and I'm super happy with how just everything came together. And it really matches that Halloween black and orange aesthetic that I was going for. So if you guys want to see more theme builds like this, let me know some ideas that you guys have in the comments down below. And if you want to see one I previously did, go ahead and check out Project Whiteout up here, as that was one of my favorite builds I've ever done. If you guys enjoyed this video and want to see more, go ahead and make sure you give this video a like, subscribe for more content, and I'll see you guys in the next one.